16 days of activism against gender-based violence campaign is held every November. During this time, you'll often hear government and others admitting that 16 days is just not enough to raise awareness about the scourge. The truth is that South Africa's problem with gender-based violence has never been more apparent, and instead of just 16 days, artist Carin Bester is trying to keep the focus on this crisis every day of the year. She's 6 months into her performance art piece called She Had a Name 365, and she's live with us now to tell us more about this. Carin, thank you so much for joining us. Describe to me what this piece, this performance piece, is all about.
Well, She Had a Name 365 is focusing on femicide in South Africa and the reality that almost 8 women are killed or murdered every single day. And what I did is I worked with statistics over the last 5 years, and that is the average we get is 2,763 women per year. And, you know, it's about letting people know, like, the one news article that you hear about every second day of a murder happening is not the reality. The reality is almost 8 women every single day. So what I'm doing is I record a video which I post every 3 hours and 10 minutes because that is how often a woman is murdered in South Africa.
Carin, that's it really just hits me so hard that, you know, it's that pervasive. How are you handling having to tell these stories every day?
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, today, this morning, I did video number 1,200, and it's 159 days. And if we think of the quantity 1,200, if you can imagine 1,200 women standing together, and then the reality that in less than 6 months, that amount of women were murdered. It's difficult, but I mean, for me, it's very important to bring this message across and to make people aware of this so that more people can try and be involved in changing this.
What are you hoping will be the effect of these videos, Carin?
One of the things I'm doing is every week I combine the videos that I've done for the previous week, and I post this on my social media, and with that I post details of organizations who fight against gender-based violence. For instance, you know, there's organizations who work in the legal field, there's women's shelters, there's and I want people to join the fight. I mean, if you are in the legal field, make contact with this organization, find a way of assisting them. If you live close to a women's shelter, add sanitary towels, toilet paper, toothpaste to your monthly toiletries and donate it to them. Clothes that you don't use anymore, donate it to them. Or just if you feel that there's nothing that you can physically do, just be vocal in that you support the fight against gender-based violence. Because very often we have people who might work with us or who are close to us and they desperately need someone to speak to, but they don't know who will believe them. And if you can just make it public that I'll believe you and I believe her, I believe them, then people will probably feel safe to approach you and say, listen, this is my situation, I don't know what to do.
Carin, I'm going to ask you something maybe that's not necessarily your forte, but I get exasperated sometimes when you talk about gender-based violence and the fight against gender-based violence because it feels like it's never going to end. What do you think we need to do to put a stop to this, to get to the people, the perpetrators themselves, and get in their heads and change their mindsets?
I mean, one of the things is obviously I think there's a lot of perpetrators where you're not going to be able to change them. You're not going to get into their head. But these perpetrators are supposed to stay in jail. I mean, back in 2019, we were promised no bail and no parole. And it's 2 years since that, and perpetrators are still being released on bail and parole. And just last week, the DA police spokesperson, Andrew Whitfield, stated that since January 2016, 96,875 convicted Schedule 8 offenders, their DNA is not being sampled. It's not in the database. So they go out on parole, they offend again, and there's no way to connect to that. And then eventually, until one of the offenders is actually raped and murdered someone, is something more serious done to it. And, so definitely a big thing that needs to happen is government needs to stop making empty promises and actually take action, instead of having campaigns where you have lipstick and tutus, or like 2018, we had the women's robot. It felt like, a campaign for a primary school, where it's a campaign for a country where almost 8 women are killed daily and average 3,300 reported rapes every month. So there's definitely more action that needs to be taken by government. And then I think it's very important also to work with young children, with young boys, because we need to change the future. So if we can change the way they see women and they view themselves and break that the cycle of patriarchy. So there's definitely, there's hope for the future if we do something now with young children. But then the perpetrators who are currently the perpetrators, they need to be in jail.
Very quickly, Carin, where do we see your work?
So it's on my social media. It's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Bester Carin, which is BESTERCARIN. And on Facebook, I've got a page which is called She Had a Name 365.
Carin, thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I'm sure it's going to have a huge, huge impact. Artist and activist Carin Bester, whose campaign is She Had a Name 365.